So I've said several times in the past that I wasn't too excited about getting a chicken egg incubator, that we'd let our chicks, our hens, go broody and allow them to incubate the eggs. And we did that. We had one broody hen already this year, and she got 2 chicks out of it. We set aside 10 eggs, and by the time it was all said and done, she got 2. And I was pretty excited about that, with the mindset that we want to replace the chickens that we currently have. So eventually the ones we have are going to get old and not produce as much. We end up butchering them. And so I want to keep a rotation of chickens each year, because the first year we got 12 hens, and they're all going to die probably around the same time. So if we do 2 this year, 4 next year, whatever, we'd eventually be able to replace all the hens that we have. But Carolyn is extremely worried about what's going on right now, especially with the bird flu going on. Everything that we're seeing, we haven't been to the store. We're going to go to the store on Friday. This is Tuesday, I believe. But everything we're seeing online just says that there's just no eggs out there. There's no chicken out there. So she sees this as a pretty serious problem. And the news never gets any better with what's going on in the world. It just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. So she wants to be a little bit better prepared than what we already are. We're not preppers, but we don't want to be caught off guard and not have everything we need available to us. So we were talking about getting an incubator this morning. So I said, how are we going to power it? So I looked it up, and it was 30 to 40 watts, which is pretty significant. But the thing is right now she's got a grow light that has 30 watts, and we're powering it just fine. Of course, she turns it off before we go to bed, so we don't have to worry about nighttime. As with an incubator, we'd have to worry about the nighttime. Essentially, I think we just have to get another battery. Now, these incubators can run up in the cost. The ones that we're looking at are anywhere from $50 to $141. That's pretty costly if you're not going to use it all the time. I mean, if you only use it once or twice, 3, 4, 5 times in your lifetime, $140 doesn't seem like it's worth it. Just let the hens go broody, and then you don't have to worry about that $140 cost. It would never pay for itself if you only did it a few times in your life. I had one in the past, and I wasn't very impressed with it. My grandma gave it to me. It was used, and it just wouldn't hold the temperature very well. We tried to do duck eggs, and duck eggs are very sensitive to humidity and temperature. And this thing would just stop working, and you'd have to readjust the thermostat all the time. Well, with chicken eggs, it wasn't so bad. We had a lot of success with chickens, but ducks, it just didn't work. So if we're going to get one, I want to make sure that it's a good one. So that means the prices are going to go up. Well, I don't know if I'd ever raise ducks or not, but I'd like to have the option available to me if I'm going to go out and spend the money for it. What is the reason for us to get an incubator? It just doesn't make any sense. Well, Carolyn said with the chicken prices going through the roof, and there's no chicken available, and they just keep calling more and more chickens. They've killed like 30 million chickens already in the last few months. That maybe we should go back to our plan of raising our own meat birds. Now, last year we raised Cornish cross hens, and those are specifically designed for meat, huge breast meat. Very small legs. In about 8 weeks, you can butcher them. If you wait too long, they'll start to die from heart attacks. They're just not a very healthy animal, but they do provide a lot of meat. After we had this hen go broody, and we only got 2 chicks out of it, I realized that we're not going to be able to get enough birds from a broody chicken to have meat from them. So it was just out of the question. I just kind of gave up on the idea and then forgot about it. But then today she says, well, if we had an incubator, we could incubate our own eggs, raise them for 12 to 14 weeks. They get about 6 pounds. We looked this up today. A New Hampshire, which we have 3 New Hampshires, would get about 6 to 8 pounds, which is roughly what the Cornish cross hens that we raised last year got to. They weren't that heavy. I mean, it was a lot of meat, but it was a lot of breast meat. So we're thinking, well, maybe we could go this direction. Now, the other thing we were thinking about is the Cornish cross hens ate a ton of food, where these birds don't eat as much. I can put out about 1 coffee can of food per day for them in the summertime, maybe just a little bit more of that, 1.5, for 14 birds that are producing eggs quite heavily right now. Whereas the Cornish cross hens, we had 25 of those, and they were going through maybe 5 coffee canfuls of food each day. And the other issue was the Cornish cross hens required higher protein amounts. So the cost of the chicken food was a lot higher. So we've been really analyzing what we want to do. So what we're thinking is if we get an incubator, now this is not set in stone, but if we get an incubator, we could run it. Now the cost of it, I probably would have to run the generator a little bit more, because we're going to have some fans running this summer, obviously, because it's going to be hot. So we're going to want fans in the house. But if we ran an incubator, say like in July, we'd hatch the eggs, then we'd only have to keep them in the house for maybe a week, and then we could transfer them out here, because the temperature outside is hot enough that they probably wouldn't need a lot of heat. So we brought them outside, and we built this thing last year for the meat birds. And this is coroplast. So if we put them in here and dropped them down, they couldn't get out. They wouldn't be able to get out once you dropped it down. Right now it's lifted up on one side so the chickens can go in and out. And this was designed to be their house. They didn't use it because we lifted it up. We'd let them go do whatever they wanted last year. But we originally thought we'd just drop it down. Well, if we had, say, 10 chickens, and we put them in here, we raise them for 12 weeks, that's plenty of room for them. I mean, tons of room. It's 10 feet long, 4 feet wide, I think. So for little bitty chickens, that'd be plenty of room. And it's flexible, so I can get in there and I can get the food and water into them. I really like the idea. What's interesting is the idea that we originally had didn't work. But now we're coming back around to, oh, that would work. So instead of doing the Cornish cross hens, which cost a fortune, just raise our own. Now, we wouldn't get as much meat out of them. And I will admit, the meat doesn't taste like chicken meat. The Cornish cross hens taste like chicken meat. There's just a different flavor with the Americanas and the Buff Orpingtons. It's a tougher meat, a little bit more chewy. But if we canned it, we'd be able to take that toughness out with all that hot temperature, you know, boiling it down until it was softer and tender. We wouldn't be able to let them into the chicken coop because there's just not enough room. That's almost at capacity now. We'd only be able to get maybe 5 or 6 more birds in there. So that was out of the question. That was my biggest concern, is we put them down here, I'd have to build another chicken coop, so there's more cost. When is this thing ever going to pay for itself? Well, this thing I built here is just really inexpensive. I don't even think that cost $50. So now we have housing taken care of, as long as we do it in the summer months. If we did it in the winter months, we'd have to keep them in the house, and that was a lot of work trying to raise them in the house. Last year, every day I would have to transfer the Americanas from the camper into the chicken run, back and forth, back and forth. But we are a little bit more secure this year. We got it so no predators can get inside of it this year. And with that coroplast, even if the predator was to get into the chicken run, they'd have a tough time trying to get into the coroplast housing. So I feel a lot better about the security of it all. And there's just not a lot of cost to it. Then we talked about food. Of course, food costs would go up. So right now, Carolyn and I eat about 7 eggs a day. Whereas if we raise the chickens, let's say we had 10 chickens, 1 chicken would probably make a meal for both of us. So 1 egg produces 1 meal, or 7 eggs produces 1 meal. So that's another way we look at it. Then Carolyn said that she's going to raise the food to feed them. So maybe not this year would we be able to feed them, but next year we'd be able to feed them food from the garden, reducing our cost even more. Of course, we go ahead and supplement them with regular chicken feed, but if we can minimize how much they have to eat, all the better. The other thing is we can grow some field corn. Right now we have this cracked corn. They love cracked corn. So if we grew some field corn, that would fatten them up right before butcher time, and we'd even get, you know, heavier, fattier chicken. Then finally, how would we power the incubator? That's the final cost that I had to analyze. So of course we'd have to run the generator. In the summertime, we don't have to hardly run the generator at all. If we ran the incubator, I'd have to run it a little bit before we went to bed, and when I got up. So about an hour each day. I can go about 5 days on a gallon of gas doing that. Incubation time's 21 days. So that's about 4 gallons of gas. So that's not a ton of money. Of course, gas prices are going up. Now, the other thing is if we had to, we could run the propane generator. We have a dual source. I've showed you that once before. So if we had to, and gas prices just got too expensive, we can run the propane and save some cost on that. Gas prices would have to get a little bit over $4 a gallon for us to switch over to propane. Right now it's like at $3.65, so we're still, you know, it goes up and down. It goes like $3.50 to $3.65 back and forth. I don't know if we're ever going to get over $4. So now we have a plan on how to power the incubator, how to feed the chicks, how to house the chicks, and how long we would keep them. We wouldn't keep them through the winter. We'd raise them for 12 to 14 weeks and butcher them. Now, like I said, it won't provide us with a ton of meat like the meat birds did. You know, the Americanas, they're a pretty small bird. So we try to put the brown eggs in the incubator. The brown eggs is the Buff Orpingtons and the New Hampshires. Those are bigger birds. So we just keep the Americana, the colored eggs. You know, I've showed you the color eggs. They're all blue and light blue and greenish color. We just keep those to eat. And then if we wanted to keep chickens, we would keep the Americana chickens to lay eggs. Of course, now Buff Orpingtons are very broody, but since now we have the incubator, we don't necessarily have to do the broody unless we want to keep them. We'll let her raise any chickens that we want to keep. Yeah, that gets kind of confusing, and I don't want to get into that too deep. But the reason we want to keep the Americana eggs is because they sell for a higher price. People will want to pay a higher price for the colored eggs. So I think we're coming up with a plan that is workable and will reduce our food costs even more, since the chicken cost is going through the roof. So if you can click onto this up next box, I really appreciate it. Take you over to my other channel. So I hope I can inspire you to plan out your future so you can live your dream. Thanks for watching.